A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I begin, as I always begin, in the name of Allah, whose grace I seek in this and all other matters. Well, you know what they say, South Africa in the house. I'm so happy that Feghmeda and Najma have agreed to do this Friends Along the Way with me. I'm not going to jump in and tell you all the exciting things that I will say after each of them have a chance to talk. I'm going to start with Feghmeda. Feghmeda Miller is the first Muslim woman in South Africa after diagnosed with HIV in 1994 to publicly disclose her HIV status in 1996. Thus far, she has survived living with HIV for 27 years, where doctors initially gave her 5 years to survive after the diagnosis. She's done several television programs locally and internationally, and appeared in various magazines, newspapers, documentaries, and on radio stations in Cape Town, where she is living, and other provinces in South Africa. Her documentary, The Malawian Kiss and Beyond Positive, tells her story and shares how she continues to educate others about the virus. In 2000, Feghmeda received the Femina Women of Courage Award and was nominated for Women That Made Difference in their communities. She has completed short courses in HIV/AIDS counseling course, counseling and testing, the role of men as partners in HIV/AIDS campaigns, basic counseling courses, Lifeline, Childline, counseling skilled courses, and completions of various HIV and AIDS workshops. In 2011, Feghmeda received the Dream Aid John Hopkins and USAID Award for Media Face and Health Promoter of the Year. Congratulations. She then has been awarded many more awards for her role in the community and for living openly with the HIV virus. In January 2001, she achieved her greatest award to herself, performing Hajj, the holy pilgrimage, with her mom. Her message is to newly diagnosed HIV positive people is this: HIV is not curable, but it is manageable. Therefore, do not think it is the end. Rather, see it as the beginning of a new life. Don't give up. Persevere. My disease cannot be by chance. I believe God chose me to become an ambassador of this pandemic, speaking openly about living with HIV, she says. HIV is part of me. It is who I am, but it does not define me or stop me from living the life the way that I want to live it. You only live once. If you do it right, once is enough. Feghmeda, you have the floor.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam.
Jazakallah, Lady Imam, for affording me this opportunity to once again briefly share my journey with you, and also then thank you for the viewers for joining us here as well. Yeah, I will basically just touch again on what you have said now. So as a child, I was considered as an introvert, always just being at home, spending time with my parents and my family. So I am a family person. So I had no friends really. My sister Najma, her friends basically became my friends as well. And that is why when I was faced with a big challenge in my life later on, her friends, which consisted most of the MYM, the Muslim Youth Movement, they really supported me. So, but yeah, we plan, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has better plans for us, or rather other plans for us. In 1994, I met a friend of a friend and I got married. And I then moved to Malawi. I've never ever left South Africa before then, but when I got married, I moved with my then husband. 7 months later, however, I became a widow. I was severely ill. I lost a lot of weight. And I then returned to my parents in Cape Town, South Africa. When my parents saw me, they basically had a fright because of all the weight that I have lost. And my mom took me immediately to our local GP. He himself didn't know any better, gave a bag full of medication, and that night I really got ill and I was rushed to hospital. 1 month later, I was diagnosed with AIDS. That time, people didn't know the difference between HIV and AIDS. And as you must know, also in South Africa, people didn't know much about the disease. And so, according to my doctors, my late husband was the one who infected me, given the history that he had tuberculosis, and they could not find any other explanation for how I contracted the virus. And today, when you go for an HIV test, you wait only 10 to 15 minutes to get your results. However, at that time, I had to wait about 2 weeks before I would know whether I had AIDS or not. And I must be honest with you, that was the longest 2 weeks of my life, not knowing. And I also asked myself, what if I do have it? What am I going to do? All these questions popped up in my head. But yeah, this death sentence literally threw me into a deep end. I quickly had to learn to either drown or survive. And I thought, let me rather survive instead of just dying. But like I said, back then in South Africa, no one talked about HIV. You die a silent death by being discriminated against and by being an outcast to society. Like I said, people don't talk about it. And this attitude of my community, and I'm now talking about the Muslim community at large, they made me realize that it was up to me to do something, or else, like I said, die a silent death. And my worst fear was being discriminated and rejected by my parents and by my siblings. That was really what basically ate me up alive, to put it like that. But after I decided to disclose to my family, that is my mom and my dad, my sister and my two brothers, they assured me of their love and support. And then for me, the world then became my oyster, literally. Yes, of course, other family members rejected not just myself, but also my parents. They refused to, communicate with us. They stayed away. But I think this made me even more determined to become a spokesperson for especially Muslims living with HIV. Sadly, our ulama, religious leaders, did not support me and asked me to please stop being so vocal about HIV. And I then realized it's because they don't know any better. So I took it upon myself to basically train them by roping in another fellow friend of mine who is a priest, HIV positive. His name is Christo Greiling, and he was a very great support to me when I came out, talking about my HIV status. And I must say, Alhamdulillah, the imams now, they accepted my status and they now refer their clients to me, that are HIV positive. So I basically help them now. We work hand in hand, to put it like that. I have been through a lot. I no longer talk about it as I have moved forward, helping others in the field of HIV. And after my first documentary, The Malawian Kiss, aired in South Africa, I became a household name. And so many people contacted me, wanting me to share their pain and discrimination just because of HIV. And for me, it was like I needed to do something. And that is why I went for all these HIV courses. First, get myself trained in the field of HIV. Because I myself, I didn't know any better. All I knew was you had HIV and you're going to die and I needed to do something. And also back then, we did not have Google. I had to read up books, basically. I couldn't just go to the computer and search what is HIV and all that. I did not have that opportunity. And in the year 2000, I, with the help of two other people, Farid Isak was one of those people, and also Abdul Qayyum, we started a support group for, back then, Muslim people living with HIV. Only in the later years, we opened it up to other faiths as well, because back then, the other faiths already had, groups in place, and they had help, they had support, whereas the Muslim people had nothing at all. So yeah, some joined the group, while others still preferred to come to me for individual support and advice. And because for them, they could not disclose at home, they could not talk to anyone, and they did not want to come out to other people about their HIV status. And I think sometimes it became quite a burden onto me, me sitting with all this knowledge about people that has HIV. And I remember back then, I don't actually like to talk about it, but I even had ulama coming to me that were infected with HIV. And I had to keep that to myself, because here on the one hand, the ulama said you must keep quiet, and on the other hand, their own people were, infected with the virus. So what do I do? Nevertheless, so 16 years after my diagnosis, I started with antiretrovirals. Now you must remember, this is not a cure for HIV. The medication only prolongs your life. But I was basically at the forefront of fighting for the rights to make the medication freely available to South Africans living with HIV. And alhamdulillah, many years later, we succeeded. We don't pay for our ARV medication. And yeah, I had many challenges. I had TB twice, tuberculosis, I had it twice. And because of that, I kind of, became deaf. The medication affected my hearing. And especially now with COVID, when people talk to me with the mask on, I can't hear what they are saying. I have to tell them, please speak up. I normally do lip reading, but because of the mask, I cannot hear what you are saying. So yeah, like I say, I had tuberculosis twice, I had shingles, I had pneumonia, and many other health challenges. Even my hair started to fall out, my teeth were breaking off, but yeah, with the grace and mercy of our Creator, I have survived. And yeah, I'm now living with HIV for 27 years, alhamdulillah. And yes, I have been fully vaccinated against COVID, because I said HIV could not kill me. So definitely COVID is not going to kill me either. So yeah, that is why I decided to get vaccinated, alhamdulillah. COVID-19 in itself brought its own challenges and stigma. And I received many messages from people, telling me it's like the beginning of HIV all over again, that stigma and discrimination. But yeah, I even did a pre-khutbah last year talking about this, the challenges of COVID-19 and HIV, the stigma attached to it, the comparison of the two. And like I say, alhamdulillah, because of my HIV status, it became a good thing, to put it like that, because I was able to travel the world, sharing my HIV status, sharing my story, and encouraging others not to give up, but to live a healthy, meaningful life and a happy life with HIV. Because I mean, I'm the perfect example. You can live a normal life with the disease, but it depends on you yourself also. And for me, it's like I said, it's not HIV, but the stigma attached to it and the discrimination that is killing people, not the disease itself. And and although I have received many awards, some I didn't even mention, I find myself so much more needs to be done still when it comes to HIV. But for me, after 27 years, I have decided to retire. I took a back seat now. And, but, I'm just like that. If someone calls me today, say they need help, they cannot cope with the HIV status, I forget about the fact that I said, yeah, I'm now retired. I'll get up, go and help that person, meet that person, and, just make sure that person is comfortable and, showing them the ropes in the field of HIV. So yeah, that is basically my story. And I must say, to end off, I never expected to live this long today. I am actually referred to as a long-term survivor with HIV. And that in itself brings a lot of challenges. Like I say, especially where my health is concerned and mindset. Because some days, I must be honest, I want to give up because, like I say, I'm tired of living with HIV. But then I have my beautiful family that's around me, my siblings especially. They encourage me, telling me, remember, you are not just here for yourself, you are here for other people as well. And but at the end of the day, life is beautiful, and you just need to make the most of it. So yes, the lady Imam, I thank you. Like I said, that's my story in a nutshell. I'm not going to talk about all the other things, and I'm just happy to be alive still. And like I say, today, my family. I'm not talking about extended families, those that discriminated against me many years back. They are overprotective over me. I cannot do this and I cannot do that. I have to tell them basically, hey, I'm still alive. I can, do things for myself. But I appreciate all the love and all the care and all the du'as that they make for me. Alhamdulillah. Shukran, jazakallah. Okay.
Wow, thank you so much. I have so many questions, but I'm going to wait and introduce your sister, my longest standing friend in South Africa. We love to say that because, I have so many friends that go back to 1994, but that's when I had another life before that together. So. Okay, so Najma is an ardent, lifelong learner. She's a qualified teacher, certified life skills coach, and accredited facilitator. Besides being the mother of 4 adult children and not yet a grandmother, she has spent much of her life working in community upliftment. Her social activism was spurred on by the apartheid era of South Africa and given a voice through membership of the Muslim Student Association, MSA, and Muslim Youth Movement, MYM, during her youth. She went back to academia 30 years after graduation and graduated in 2016 with an honors degree in social sciences. And in 2020, she graduated with a master's degree in social sciences from the University of Cape Town. She's also a member of Positively Muslim, an NGO that focuses on empowerment of women. She enjoys the simple pleasures of life and finds vigor and restoration in nature, traveling, the outdoors, and in spending time with her family and friends. My friend, you have the floor.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is indeed an honor to be here, Dr. Amina, with you today. I feel very honored because our journey goes such a long way back, and I feel the love across. When I look at you, I just feel the love for so much time shared and so many moments spent together. Although we don't always see each other, they always say sometimes you have those friends we never see them, but when the minute you see them, it's like no time has been between them. So that is truly my feeling at this moment as I'm sitting here. I feel very emotional being here with you as well. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to your guests as well. I must be honest, Dr. Amina, I have never spoken about myself and my journey, so you're putting me about on the spot. I'm not very public like Feghmeda about the journey, but I'm much more private. But the irony is, in growing up, I was more the public person and Feghmeda was the quiet one. And our lives have literally just switched, like that. I became the quiet one and she became the public one. And that was okay. I was always very happy for her to do what she was doing. And we were always very supportive. Okay, so I will start by briefly just situating Islam and Muslims in South Africa in a historical context. Okay, so Islam reached the shores of Cape Town more than 350 years ago with the arrival of the Dutch in 1652 by the Dutch East India Company that established Cape Town as a halfway house for its ships traveling from Holland to the East Indies. And it also served as a penal settlement for convicts and political exiles from the East, especially those who opposed the Dutch occupation. So among them were prominent leaders and royalty who hailed from what was known as the Malay Archipelago, or modern day Indonesia. That's where you are today. And today is Heritage Day in South Africa. It's actually a public holiday. So I found that this connection between us is so special as we celebrate our heritage. And what better, to go way back to our roots, which started from where you are. So it's indeed a significant connection, historically as well. So I find that connection very, very meaningful. I will mention two of the most renowned Muslim leaders in South Africa, which is Sheikh Yusuf, known as Sheikh Yusuf of Makassar, which is a place in Indonesia, and Abdullah ibn Qadi Abdul Salam, also known as Tuan Guru. I think Sheikh Yusuf Makassar, I'm sure you must have went to his Kramat. It's a bit way out in Forest, a bit quite a distance from Cape Town. But he was banished because they felt threatened by his presence among the slaves. Some slaves came to South Africa to use them as labor force as well. So they felt threatened by this group of Muslims that they brought, and they wanted him to be out on the periphery. So his Kramat is on the periphery of Cape Town, quite a distance, but he managed to mobilize the slave community, kept identity, kept them going, and teach them Islam as well. The second one, which is also quite prominent, is what we know as Tuan Guru, came from Tidore, also in Indonesia. He was exiled to the Cape and he was incarcerated on Robben Island, where Mandela was the first democratic elected president. Nelson Mandela was also incarcerated on Robben Island. Interestingly, he wrote the first Quran from memory on Robben Island, and that copy of the Quran is still available in the Old Mosque. I don't know if you've been to the Old Mosque in Bukav, where you can still see the handwritten copy of the Quran of Tuan Guru or Qadi Abdul Salam. And upon his release from prison, Tuan Guru established the very first Madrasa in Cape Town. So this Madrasa, it is basically where elementary Islamic education took place for children, particularly adults in the Cape. And this system of Madrasa have continued until today, in this day and age. We have Madrasa education in Cape Town. So the Muslims in the Cape have a rich history and legacy. And I was born, myself and Feghmeda, and we've got two brothers as well, the four of us. We were born from Muslim parents. So both my mother and my father were Muslim. And my grandfather from my mother's side was an imam in the area where they lived in Goodwood. And both my parents were also from the same area. And they both experienced the impact of apartheid, because the area where they lived was declared a white area. And my grandparents had to forcefully remove from the area, and they lost everything. Obviously, even their properties, they just got given a paltry sum of money, and they had no choice, they had to leave. So we were designated the area called Elsis River, one of the Cape Flats area, they call it the Cape Flats, where people just had to get out of the outskirts, out of the main part of Cape Town and move to the outskirts, called the Cape Flats during the apartheid. And eventually my family settled in Belhar. So that is myself and Feghmeda, we started going to Madrasa in Belhar, and it was like, there was nothing, it's like a neighborhood where we really start all over again. And I remember we had a very dynamic imam in the area. He established the Madrasa, then we would go to Madrasa, and that is where I basically received, both of us, we received our Islamic education in terms of, I learned, basic Arabic, learned how to make salah and all of those basic knowledge in Islam. it was also during the 1980s when I was in high school. We also know how we went to high school, that I was introduced to the MSA, which was a political movement inspired by the Muslim Brotherhood and the Iranian Revolution. And it saw Islam as a means of resistance. And this was a means for us and a sense of identity, that how we could resist the apartheid. Using the Quran, and there's particularly this one verse in Surah Al-Imran 104, was always instilled in us in the MSA. Let there rise from among you a group of people inviting to all that is good, enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong. They will be the successful ones. And obviously we saw the that this oppression, this apartheid was wrong. And this Quran ayah could substantiate to us that this was not acceptable. It wasn't okay as a Muslim to endure what we've been enduring. At high school, we were particularly conscientized about the injustice of apartheid, and Islam was presented as the only solution. Islam gave us as youth a sense of identity and a political mission. So after completing high school, I joined an educational institution in 1983, where I studied to become a teacher. I graduated in 1987. That was also where I started the first MSA, because there was no MSA when we went there. I mean, literally nobody, there was one person wearing hijab. There was nobody wearing hijab. During my time at the college, I started wearing hijab. I remember, and we asked for a place to, we formed MSA. We got a place to make salah, for example, and just started activities. Interesting, that's why I met Fatima Nuruddin during my student days. You remember Fatima as well? So she also, in her area, they also had the MSA. I think she was involved, one of the executive members of the MSA, and she came also to the institution where I was teaching, because we invited them as a guest speaker one time. I was introduced to Tarbiyah classes through Ibrahim Musa, Rashid Umar, and others. They started the training and training us as students, so forth. I also attended my first ITP, they call it the Islamic Tarbiyah program, ITP. We had an annual ITP in Cape Town. We'll have one in Cape Town, the next one will be in Johannesburg, and one will be in Durban. So the first time I ever left Cape Town was when I went by bus to Johannesburg as a student to attend an ITP, and that's where we met all the others, collecting with other students in the country, coming from the other provinces, and that's what our network started, basically. That was my network. And after I graduated, I started teaching, and then because I was no longer a student, I joined now the MYM, the Muslim Youth Movement. So that was basically, the MSA was your feeders group to get you into the MYM. There were also other organizations that came about. There was the Call of Islam, which Farid, you mentioned Farid earlier on, and others joined, like Ibrahim Rasool and Rashid Omar, for example. Imam of Clement Mahindra Mosque was part of the MYM, and I joined the MYM. In 1988, the year that I was teaching, I went with Rashid Omar and his wife Suleila and another sister Firoza and myself as the MYM delegation for an annual girls Tarbiyah program in Malawi. So this is very interesting, because Malawi is in Central Africa, also known as the warm heart of Africa, but also one of the really poorest countries in the world. Really very poor country, because the people mainly, there's not much resources, and the people live along the lake, which is the second largest lake in Africa, is Lake Malawi. And they live, they are subsistence farmers, they grow, they fish, and that is basically the life which they have in Malawi. But the interesting part of Malawi was also was under British colonialism. There was a colonial rule, and after that it went into democracy in 1964. And then they had a President Kamuzu Banda was considered a lifelong president. He ruled until 1994. But during that time in Malawi, when it interesting was that it's like nobody came into Malawi, because during colonial time, they were very wary. There were Muslims in Malawi. They also have a long history, like Cape Town has. Their Islam came via Tanzania, Mozambique, the coast, and they've moved into via trade routes into the Lake of Malawi. So the bigger concentration of Muslims are fishermen along the Lake of Malawi. And for some reason, they call them the Yao tribe. And they have preserved Islam. They have learned ulama amongst them through the connections to, of course, to Yemen, to Mozambique, Swahili, the Swahili Somalia coast as well. So they had also a history. They also have a history of Islam. And I think the local colonial rules were felt threatened by the presence of Muslims in the country. It's like, when these Muslims are there, there's something's about to happen. They can connect with others or connive their way. So it was quite interesting because in South Africa, even now during apartheid, the MYM always had international guest speakers for their programs. They were connected to the outside world, and that was kept them going and motivated. I remember one time, that was before I joined the MYM, but I've heard always from older members speaking about the late Ismail Faruqi that came. He was one of the founders of IT that came to South Africa. They were very inspired by him. He's one of the founder members of the International Islamic Institute of International Islamic Thought in America. They were found in America, of course. And then, of course, there's others, Jamal Barzanji, there was Dr. Hisham Al-Talib, Dr. Umar, Dr. Tutunji. Those are all part of the thought. And of course, the late Dr. Abu Hamid Suleiman, which we spoke earlier on, that was the rector of Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim as well. And yes, so this is the link to Malawi. So I'm going to link it now to where I come into that part, because I actually married Sheikh Saad Al-Talib that was in Malawi, and he's related to Dr. Hisham Al-Talib and that family. And he was sent to Malawi as a missionary. And he established African Muslim Agency in 1982 in Malawi. So that was actually the first office. African Muslim Agency was founded by Dr. Sumait in Kuwait I think in 1981 it was founded. And in 1982, Saad was sent to Malawi to start this missionary activities. Now, considering that Malawi was landlocked, it was away, and it has this overwhelming Christian missionary presence, because David Livingstone set up his school. He founded the lake, how this mission is coming. He founded the lake in Malawi. He set up the Livingstone mission, and then they have all these Christian missionary schools in Malawi. And for Malawians, and what they did was to marginalize Muslims and to so that they could not be a threat. You were only allowed in the school if you were Christian, meaning you have to have a Christian name. If you had a Muslim name, no way you can enter the school. So obviously that marginalized Muslims and made them illiterate. But later on, they realized the value of education, so they will change their name or give themselves a Christian name, although they're still Muslim. So even interestingly today, when you find a Malawian and they give you a Christian name, and you can ask, okay, so what's your Muslim name? Your Arabic name or Muslim name? Because they would have them go by the Christian name so that they could get education. And that was the means for them to get educated. And unfortunately, a large part of the Muslim population did embrace Christianity as well. Well, this landscape obviously changed when Saad entered Malawi. He was known as Sheikh Saad, of Malawi, when he entered in 1982 and built all these mosques. Within 6 years, there's everywhere in Malawi, there was mosques being built, there's madrasas being built. So they felt it. So when we went, I went with this MRM delegation with Rashid Omar, and we went to, in fact, we attended as guest speakers for one of the girls' tarbiyah programs that happens annually at the end of the year. They collect all the girls from all the high schools throughout the country, put them in one camp, they have a camp, and then they have this training program. So this is where I attended. And there's another, for the MYM have another acronym for the MYM, meet your mates. of the brothers and sisters ended up getting married to each other. So I ended up getting married to Shahzada Al-Talib of Malawi through Rashid Umar being introduced. He was married. He came from Iraq, studied in Qura University in Mecca, and never went back home, and went to Malawi. That's how I ended up. And I being, having this activist background, for me, all I could see was I can serve Islam. And this for me was enough motivation to get married and go to live in this part of the world. Unfortunately, fortunately, first we got married that year. 2 months later, after I'd been there, we got married in 1988, October. But 2 months later, Saad got deported from Malawi. I think it was it became unbearable, to the authorities having this
Force.
This Islamic force, this idea, this seeing what is happening, because you have this missionary working that's gone on undisturbed for years, and now suddenly there's somebody coming and disturbing this landscape with the mosque and with the activities and educating people as well. So we left Malawi in 1988, and we came to South Africa. We were just newly married, and then I think in the Islamic University of Malaysia was established, and Anwar Ibrahim was Minister of Education, and there was an opportunity for Triple IT to expand their thought into the Islamic University. And then Dr. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman was invited by Anwar Ibrahim to come and to be the rector of the university. I mean, I learned this even now when I used to know he passed away a month ago, and I listened to his memorial lecture. It was so interesting to learn the history, because I felt like I was part of the history, So we went to Malaysia, and where Saad was doing liaising for the international students. But for the first time now, the university was expanding, and it had all these international students, and there was this position for him to liaise, with the international students. Saad, by the way, is not an academic. He's not. He's by heart an African and a da'i. Give him the field, and that's where he's the happiest. So we spent, and that's the time in 1989 that I met you in Malaysia, 1989-91, I remember. And I was pregnant with my first child as well. And we spent about a year in Malaysia. And we remember we met briefly during that time. But unfortunately, Saad's heart was not there. So we left in 1991. I think after our daughter was born, we left in 1991. And we didn't go back to Malaysia. When we came back to South Africa, we spent some time in Johannesburg, because he also then introduced African Muslim Agency to South Africa, and he established the office. It's still running today. He, through the late Farid Shonara, he established that. And then after that, we moved back to Cape Town. And then I had 3 more children, and all, and in 1994, that's when South Africa went through democracy, and then also that a lot of changes happened into the country in 1994. And that's you came to South Africa in 1994, I remember, in August 1994. Because when I met you in August 1994, I was pregnant with my 4th child, I remember. And I remember we hosted you. You stayed actually at our house in Cape Town. And it was so lovely, because I've met you in Malaysia, and I've met you in Cape Town about 4 years later, 1991, 5 years later, I had 4 children. And that was, your whole story when you did the pre-khutbah talk at Claremont Main Road Mosque, and we reconnected with Rashid Omar that came with me to Malawi, and, we all of us connected. I remember very well the day we spent in Kirstenbosch Gardens together, and just, reminisce. I don't know if it's pre or post khutbah, but that was the memories we have, that activism, that was the spirit. And that was the way even Rashid Umar was, the gender jihad, the way to move forward is to include women in the spaces, in the mosque spaces. I was reminded of this when I was busy reading this book by Yasser Auda on, women reclaiming the mosque space. And there were so many, involved in that project, the Gender Jihad project, Rashid Omar, and that was where you came in as well. At that time, I wasn't really living in Cape Town anymore. I just moved shortly, from Malaysia and Cape Town as well. But in that period, Saad set up an office here in Cape Town. Before he set up an office, and he brought one of his close friends and staff member to Cape Town. Abdul Qadir. And that's when Abdul Qadir's brother visited him, and he was the one whom Feghmeda got married to. Okay, that was the connection. So Feghmeda got married in 1994 in April, and you came in August that year. So when you came, we didn't meet her because she was already left to Malawi at that time. All right. And later in the years at 94, Malawi also went through democracy. So that was very interesting because South Africa and Malawi went through democracy in the same time in 1994. But what was also more interesting for us, or what spurred us onto a different trajectory, was when South was in Malawi during this first era of Malawi, he had Bakili Maluzi became the president, the first democratically elected president of Malawi was Bakili Maluzi, which was a Muslim activist as well. And he was Saad's friend and ally during his first era in Malawi. So it was like, oh, wow, you know, after all that, the struggle they went through in Malawi, the first democratically elected president is a Muslim, considering all the missionary work that took place, and how can a Muslim become president? That was really a boost in morale for the Muslims of Malawi. It was a turning point for them because they felt a sense, for the first time, they felt a sense of identity and victory. That after all this missionaries work, after all that had been happened, here we have the first democratically elected president in 1995 as a Muslim. And he was Saad's friend as well. So we had the opportunity to go back to Malawi. And knowing Saad, you could not miss that opportunity. So we left. We left in 1995. At the time we left, we had 4 young children. They were 1, 2, 4, and 6. So we left, and the children started schooling in Malawi. And there was this opportunity now to go back and redo the work in Malawi under this new Muslim president as well, and obviously support the work and allow the activities to take place. It was a challenging time because every time in every era is always different. It's not the same. Because Saad went back independently as well. He wasn't working for African Muslim Agency at this time. But you know what, coming from the movement and the movement background, for myself, what I felt was that this second era focused more on building the education system rather than building bricks and mortar, which was in the first era during African Muslim Agency. So there was a system of recruiting students into primary school and high school, and there was also the system that students had to pay school fees, and many of the parents can't afford, they're too poor, and yet they have a system of school fees. So then this is where the Islamic work started, you know, getting school fees, getting kids into school, primary school and high school. And then the challenge was there were so many dropouts as well. Kids they were just not grounded enough to be able to make it to primary or even high school. And you know, knowing myself coming from my activist background, the first thing I saw in having 4 small children was there was no Muslim nursery schools. And that for me was alarming. And you know what, immediately, I mean, there was the mosque, it was a classroom. I approached one of the brothers that's beside me. I said, look, hold it, can we start something here? And he said, yes, you go ahead, sister, you can have the classroom. And the first Muslim nursery school in Malawi was started. You know? That was the first Muslim nursery school. And I think people felt like by the time we went back, there were other missionaries also working. And I felt, this is way too long, you know, to look these little ones and take them, see them through, it's way too long. And I felt that is where the Christians always had the upper hand. They had the long-term vision. And for once, I think we realized that is the way to go. If you want to make a change in a country, you have to start with the education system. You have to start with the small ones. And I remember, you know, for 5 years that I was there, from 1995 to 2000, running this nursery school with my children growing up, and then running this nursery school. My energy went into this nursery school, this one nursery school. And training, had the teachers trained, you know, get them, it was non-existent. Muslim nursery schools and Muslim nursery school teachers weren't existing at that time. Find like, where can I find, you know, a syllabus, and where can we, you know, improvise, teaching them about Islam at that young age, getting the parents involved, particularly the mothers, because that was a way to get mothers involved now. And in the year 2000, Saad established Zamzam Foundation, and it's still running until today. So for the last 20 years now, we have Zamzam Foundation that's running the Islamic activities in Malawi. And that is basically the vehicle for Islam. And the office running, the staff and people running. So that is a constantly running organization. But the good thing was in 2000, Zamzam Foundation took this nursery school project and expanded it. And it became a dozen nursery schools. It became a dozen nursery schools. And that was sort of my baby, my project, running these programs. Train the teachers, and then we got more students from these nursery schools. We could have feeder schools that became feeder schools to get students into primary school and into high school. I'll share one story from the same nursery school that we started. There was one little girl that was extremely bright. She came from a village and the parents were extremely poor, in poverty, but she was this bright little star in the school. And the teachers always tell me how this girl is exceptional. And we then kept her, and we put her through primary school, we put her through high school, private high school. When Star took over Zamzam Foundation, they took her and many other students, but I'm choosing it as an example. And she finished university, and today she is a pharmacist, one of maybe just 5 pharmacists or 6 Muslim pharmacists in the country. So it was, at least sometimes, when you do education, you don't see the fruits of your labor, as you don't even realize it. But this is one success story that she persevered and she completed. Just from the nursery school, we can say we have a pharmacist that came from this village nursery school. Alhamdulillah, this is for me humbling, that where I feel my roots came from the MYM and the MSA, that, when you let there be this group of people enjoying to good, but what is wrong, and give people this opportunity to educate them, and to learn. So this is my, in a nutshell, maybe my story. And then in 2005, I came back to Cape Town with my 4 children, because what happened, unfortunately, where we lived in Zomba, there was no high school for our children. So our kids went to a private primary school, there was no high school, which means they had to go to boarding school somewhere in the country. And even if they did that, eventually there's also no university for them. And this is the one time I had to make a decision as a mother of my children. So, I have served others, but my children also need me now. So in 2005, I came back to Cape Town and for the children to continue their education. But at that time, also, while I lived in Malawi, and this is the other part of my personal story, which I don't really share, but I think is interlinked, was the year after we got married, we moved to Malawi in 1995. The following year, my husband married another wife. So we had this polygamous relationship, or polygamous situation, which worked very well over in Malawi. So I have 4 children, she have 4 children. Our children are 8 together, and they've grown up together with each other. And I came back to Cape Town, and because her children are younger than mine, he's carried to stay on in Malawi. I came alone and see to the needs of the children. And this was to me a very challenging situation, because for the next 10 years of my life, literally, I was a single mother, because I had to see resetting the children back, reintegrating them again. And Cape Town is not their home because they haven't grown up there. They grew up in Malawi, and it was new. So, and Saad came back. He did come back to Cape Town, but then he left. He went to Saudi, and for a few years, and that it wasn't convenient for me. It didn't suit our situation. So I had to make the decision to stay behind alone and to take care of the children and the family, which I did, alhamdulillah. But I felt there was no me there. I was serving, because many of us as mothers do, as community people, we serve. And I have to be honest, I have to a degree neglected myself. But in 2015, it was a turning point for me, because I joined Positively Muslim. No, Positive Muslims. Positively Muslim closed down in 2000, I think.
2011.
2011.
10 or something.
2011, Positively Muslim closed down. So I was in Cape Town again now. And then remember when Feghmeda went through her challenges, I was not here. I was in Malawi. I left in 95 and she was here in Cape Town alone. I wasn't there. I was not part of her journey, although she used to send me letters, because those times there was no WhatsApp, there was no phone calls. She would write to me, handwritten. I used to remember having a handwritten letter telling me, oh, the new president is Nelson Mandela is the president, and she, what's happening in the country, So that's how I communicate via letters, snail mail, they call it. Not even emails. So I was not part of Feghmeda's journey at all. My life evolved around what I was doing, supporting my husband, doing my work in Malawi, and growing our family. So when I came back in 2005, that's why I started to know Feghmeda's work and, seeing what she's doing. I attended some of her work, her lectures and stuff. And in 2011, the organization closed down. And a few years later, she and Fatima Noordin and Faranese Hashim, the three of them established Positively Muslim, because all three of them worked in Positive Muslims, and they felt there was a vacuum. There's a need to get together. There's a need in the community. And I remember attending the launch, and then I joined the organization in 2015. And the organization was linked with Mohsin Hendricks, with the Inner Circle. And that is where we started as a Muslim women group, which is also marginalized within the community, and considering that this was the LGBTQ community, but also having Muslims that's also not being protected in the community as well. So this is where we came in, and we attended the AIR programs through Positively Muslim. And that is why I think I reconnected with you, because after I joined Positively Muslim as well. You came to one of the AIR retreats. So we joined a few of the AIR retreats, about 3 of the AIR retreats, which I've joined with them. And so in 2015, I joined Positively Muslim. And I remember meeting Dr. Fatima Sidat at the retreat as well. She came down. And then she asked me, she said to me, I'm looking for students I have a master's degree program, to enroll them in a master's degree program. If I know anybody, I could let her know. And I looked at it, and the first thing thought in my mind, a small little voice inside of me said, me. But I was so long out of the circle of academia and stuff. I wasn't, but I always knew that I wanted to pursue further studies. There's something else I knew in my heart I wanted to do. First of all, because I felt that there's always this gap between activist and academia. You're either an activist or an academic. And I felt this could breach the gap. And that was my purpose for wanting to pursue this further studies, is to breach this gap. And then I said to her, look, I would like to join this program. She said, yes, what do you have? I said, well, I did study. I have this, qualification. And she said, okay, let's first see what it is. And then she said, okay, you'll need an honors degree. And during the time when I Positively Muslim, Fatima showed me a clip, Fatima Noordin, of Musawa. That was the first time I was introduced to Musawa. I watched this clip and I was inspired. I was just so inspired by what I saw. I was like, wow, I've missed out here, on something. And then then I applied to UCT and I got accepted in the religious studies department to do honors degree. And I did my honors on Musawa. That's what I did. I have to do something about this. I really wanted to know all about it. And that's when I got reintroduced to Dr. Sadia Sheikh. I did all the coursework on, the Islamic feminism. I did, Dr. Abdulkader Taib was my supervisor. I studied myths in Islam, and my topic was the myth of Musawa. Myth meaning, in a sense, that creating a new truth. That was the meaning of myth, creating a new truth. So that was very inspiring and very meaningful. And I learned all about your work, and I got reconnected to you through your work in Musawa and so forth. Interestingly, another twist in it. So in that year, 2016, there was this fees must fall situation at UCT. There was this boycotts and so forth. So I could not submit my. So there was we delayed the date for submission was extended for honors thesis. In that year, December, Saad came back from Saudi. I remember that so clearly, And all his family came to Cape Town for a reunion in Cape Town from all over the world, from Dubai, from America. So all these siblings that I hadn't met came to Cape Town. They all came to live. They lived at my house. And I was supposed to hand in my honest thesis. I was busy with that. And I remember clearly, Dr. Amina, I had to make a choice. I said, I was doing this for me. And here I was presented with the situation. I had to make a choice. And I said, I can always study again, but I might not have this chance to have all this family together. It was a historic moment. And I said, and I think in that moment, I think I taught my children the value of family. I felt always like family, no matter what you do, family comes first. I think that was how I was raised. And I think that was also how we could support Feghmeda through her challenge. Because that was for us, we were instilled as growing up, that the importance of family. And I think for me, this was, I don't know, I can't say whether it was a right decision or a wrong decision, I don't know. But what all I can remember was, it wasn't even a question to think. It was just, no, the family comes first. And I think that was the same way how we embraced Feghmeda with her journey. We never questioned, we never asked, it's family, you have to support your family. And then that was an unconditional support for family. I think that's a value that I've grown up with, that's a value that I demonstrated. Yet, I was also brought up with a value of education. So there was the value of family and the value of education. And in this moment, it was both coming into me in one go. And I chose to put my books aside for a month. I said, it's okay. I can always come back to it. And we had the most beautiful family time together. And when the family left in January 2017, I locked myself up. I told everybody, please do not contact me. Don't hear from me. I'm in Khalwa, And that's where I to sit down and write down my honest thesis and give it. I submitted it. And in that year, I graduated in 2017, exactly 30 years after I graduated as a teacher, in my teacher's graduation in 1987. So I finished both. So I think the lesson for me was that, I don't know, is that you can embrace your values both. So I felt I embraced both my values of education and of family. So alhamdulillah, that was that's a successful story in that sense. And Dr. Fatima had this master's program. So I did my honors to enter her program. Lo and behold, that changed. The program was no longer available. And she moved to Cape Town. She was at UKZN in Durban. She moved to Cape Town. And then I then applied through Dr. Abdul Qadir Tayyib, who is the chair of Islam, chair of Islam and Public Values at UCT. I applied through Dr. Abdul Qadir Tayyib, through whom also I did my honors degrees, and I got accepted for the master's degree program through him. And he has a specialization in life trajectories. But when I did my master's, I knew I want to write my sister's story. I knew that for me, this is the story I want to bring into academia. This was an activist story, and I want to bring that into the academic space. And alhamdulillah, I did my master's degree on the life trajectory of Feghmeda, my sister Feghmeda Miller, and being a long-term survivor of HIV and AIDS. So that's a trajectory. I'm asking me, why did I do it? Again, I felt for me that was a healing for me, because I wasn't here at the time when she went through the challenges. And for me, that was my closure for my sister to be there for her, as it was my healing journey to be there for her as well. And also to bridge to academia. So I graduated last year, in 2020. And in the meantime, only one daughter got married. She lives in Egypt. And in the end of last year, I went to Egypt to visit her as my graduation gift. So I think that's my journey where I am basically today. Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you so very much. I did tell you guys the time goes fast, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Everybody was so nervous. We are at the time, but I'm going to go over because I didn't get a chance to say my little spiel here. And thank you for filling in the gaps for the years that, I kept coming back and forth to South Africa after 1994, but the places where I came, the things that I, would do, they pretty much kept me busy. So I didn't really realize how long was the period of time that you had been in Malawi. So I love that you both have this. One day I hope to visit Malawi and to fish at the lake, because it just sounds like something, you know, in the middle of Africa that would be beautiful to do. I just want to tell you that when I thought about this series that I'm doing, you know, it is about, you know, my friends. And I also tell people that, you know, these stories will be in an archive, you know, long after we're no longer on this earth. The years that I've known the two of you, and they're not the same years, but over the years, I just want to say that even though there have been, you know, deep, you know, personal struggles, that you still somehow manage to just stay faithful and to keep the light burning. And that's what was on my mind when I thought about, you know, having the two of you here. When I was invited to do the prayer and to do the khutbah in 1994, the pre-khutbah, there were two people who spoke to me right after the khutbah, and they have been, you know, a lasting memory for me. I even recorded it in my second book. And one was Sadia Sheikh and the other was Najma. And really what Najma said to me captured the spirit of what the experience had been for me. And that was, she said, I don't have to be anyone else. I could just be myself. You know, I'm a Muslim woman. I could just be myself. And she was very much pregnant. And I just thought that's the miracle of it, that, you know, women have a voice, and the voice speaks from a certain energy of love and light, and at the same time of struggle. And the two of you in your life, you capture that in the ways in which you have persevered for things greater than yourself, through your own bodies, I mean, just, you know, I call it embodied ethics. And you both represent that for me. And I can't wait to hug you again and to see you again, which, you know, South Africa is so dear to me. It's always on my itinerary. So I will be making my way there, inshallah. But because we did go really far in the time, I won't do any questions, just because I need to keep these in a kind of a bottle so that when I present them, it's reasonable for the, you know, the viewers that's out there, you know. But I'm so grateful to you. I learned a lot. I have a lot of questions. I just realized that, you know, there's some things greater than me, and one of them is the clock. So I won't elaborate, but really, I am honestly so grateful that you have been in my life and that you have persevered in your own lives with the struggles that you have engaged with. And it has been my honor, really. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for speaking. Thank you so much for being you. May Allah bless you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Keep well.